So, if you watched the Apple event, you probably know that Apple released a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro. Both of them now have the exact same chip. Yes, the MacBook Air now has the exact same chip as the MacBook Pro. And before we continue, I would like to ask you to quickly like, subscribe, and comment any feedback that you have. And now that that's done, let's dive into a quick recap of what happened in the Apple event before I can explain to you why I think the MacBook Air will replace the MacBook Pro. So we start off being introduced to the M1 chip, a variation of the A14 chip that's going inside 3 new Macs. The M1 chip has amazing CPU power with its 8 CPU cores and also amazing graphics power with its 8 GPU cores. Now we don't exactly know how powerful, but in the event, Apple said it could handle editing 4K video perfectly, no drop frames in DaVinci Resolve, and that is not an easy task. That's something the old MacBook Air wouldn't dream of doing, and something the base model MacBook Pro, the old one, had a hard time with. Anyway, then they talk about efficiency and how these laptops will be extremely power efficient, which we expected, so that's pretty cool. Okay, moving on to products. Apple announced a fanless MacBook Air starting at $999 with the M1 chip. In fact, Apple said the Air could handle 4K video editing despite its fanless design, which would be a game changer. It also has like 15 hours of battery life, which is a lot. They also announced a Mac Mini with the M1 chip and dropped the base model to a price of $699. The Mac Mini has one fan, by the way. A MacBook Pro was announced with the M1 chip, and it's the same as earlier this year, except the M1 chip, so it does keep one fan. It's projected to have a battery life of like 18 to 20 hours, and the price of that is still $1,299, same as before. Also, all of these only come with two USB 4/Thunderbolt 3 ports, even the more expensive MacBook Pros. Only 2 ports, which is kinda sad. Okay, that's the recap. Okay, now we're going to start comparing the two. Just a quick disclaimer, all of this is hypothetical since these Macs aren't actually in my hands or other people's hands. However, you can order them right now, so just that disclaimer. Okay, so now that you're all caught up, let's talk about the Air and the Pro. Because they have the same chip, many people think that the performance on both the Air and the Pro will be the same, and that there's no reason to buy the Pro now. I think that that's partially correct. Yes, the Air might now have power comparable to the Pro, but it's not equal. You see, the Air has a fanless design, which means that the chip gets hotter faster. It also means that it cannot maintain a super high level of CPU usage for a long time. Here, let me show you a graph. If the top of that bar is the max power of the chip, the Air can only utilize so much of that power consistently, or else it'll thermal throttle and overheat. Because the Pro has a fan, the laptop can get hotter because it's also getting cooled, meaning it can maintain more CPU usage for longer. So basically, people who need a certain level of CPU power constantly will still opt for the Pro. However, this is where it gets interesting. The Air, because of the better chip, can still theoretically do tasks that require a chunk of CPU power. I would rate the power of the base M1 Air to the power of the old base MacBook Pro. The same goes for if you're upgrading the RAM on the old Pro. It should be equal to the M1 Air with more RAM. However, the line shifts when you get into the high-end MacBook Pro level. Not the 16-inch, but the 13-inch Pros that started at $1,800 and introduced the 10th gen Intel processors. The people who would have gone for those MacBooks would have probably gone for the M1 MacBook Pro. Now, I don't think the M1 Pro will be just as good as the 16-inch just yet. So if you need something like the 16-inch, then don't go for the M1 Pro. But the people that would have bought the 10th gen old MacBook Pro will probably go for the current M1 Pro. So the difference is $1,800 and then $1,300. So it's still a significant amount of saving on your part. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the new MacBooks, how the M1 Air will probably steal customers away from the old Pro, but not all of them. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and have a great day.